Idaho Central. Absolutely the most beautiful days. Yeah, I am so excited about this. In the last episode, Garrett and I attempted to ride a portion of the California Trail as it enters Nevada from Idaho. It was April, and it turns out we were pushing the season just a little bit. With snow still deep across sections of the road and runoff still making for some water crossings, we ultimately had to turn back. Apparently we're not as hardy as some of those folks 150 years ago. After backtracking along the trail and then turning south on Highway 95, we finally arrived at Wells, Nevada at dusk. After a quick dinner and some needed sleep, we were ready for the next leg of our adventure. Good morning, it's day 3. So we had to stop and get some oil this morning. Garrett's bike was about a quart low, so we don't know what's going on. But we're in Wells, getting ready to go to the big town of Metropolis. Anyway, we're off to a car wash to give the bikes a quick rinse, and then Metropolis, and then later in the day, we're going to be hitting the Transcon. So our first stop today is the ghost town of Metropolis. It's a short trip of about 8 or 10 miles west of Wells. And what makes this place unique, at least to me, is that the town's entire existence was during the 20th century. It's not the Old West like you'd expect to see from a John Wayne or a Clint Eastwood movie. Here the arrows show Metropolis in relation to Wells. The red line shows the modern rail lines still in use today, and the yellowish-orange lines show the historic route of the original Transcontinental rail line and the branch line built to serve the fledgling town. Those original tracks are long gone, but looking closely, you can still see the scars in the earth where they once lay. Around 1912, a dam was built along Bishop Creek, 15 miles east of Metropolis. The diversion canal was built with the expectation of irrigating some 30,000 acres of farmland carved out of the arid desert. The area was heavily promoted, and the LDS Church actively encouraged some of their members to set up a colony there. The town site was platted and modern buildings constructed, including a large public school, hotel, post office, and more. The Southern Pacific Railroad opened a new 8-mile branch line to the new town, seemingly adding a sense of permanence to the settlement. The town grew to over 700 people, and with their life savings, these folks established farms and built businesses. They erected homes and started families. There was just one problem. The developer never secured water rights to Bishop Creek, and the downstream city of Lovelock, with senior water claims, sued. Unable to irrigate, the farms dried up, as did the town. By 1924, the city had lost more than half its population, with the last commercial business closing in 1925. By 1942, the post office closed, and in 1950, the town was a ghost town, having literally died from thirst. We're trying to figure out why anybody would, of all the places that you could homestead and try to start a colony, what would make somebody plant the flag in the ground right here in this location and say, this is the place we're going to build a town? It just seems a little, it's arid here. There's no water. We're finally done with our side trip, so it's time to tackle why we're here. To ride the Transcontinental Railroad Byway. We turned east and now headed towards Utah. Railroads have always been a fascination of mine, but you probably already guessed that. The Transcon really isn't an ordinary railroad. It's the route that connected east and west and cemented ours as a single united nation.
So what Garrett and I are doing is a little bit different. We are following the original 1860s Central Pacific grade, but we're following it not from Lucin, which is the beginning of the Transcontinental Railroad Byway. We're actually following it from Wells. So this is an additional, 70 miles. So instead of just being a 90-mile trip, we're turning it into a 160-mile trip. So looking down, this would have been the track laid by the Irish and Chinese immigrants in 1869.
For us, the extra 70 miles we added to the route between Wells and Lucin was a no-brainer. This map shows the area we're talking about. In this section, the original grade has been moved to accommodate modern trains. Where modern tracks run nearby, entire sections have become disused as, over time, the route was shortened and curves straightened. The map above shows part of this very section with the red line representing the modern grade and the yellowish-orange line showing the original grade, laid in 1869. After leaving Wells, we were able to follow the grade for 20 or 30 miles using both GPS and maps. We thought we had an all-dirt route that closely followed the original rail line, but we kept coming up short. Tracks that we had put together were coming up gated, posted, and we had to backtrack on a couple of occasions. Still think there's an open route, we just didn't find it this time.
So I know it's hard to see, but we've got a track, we're following it, Wild West Road. This is going to get us to Lucin, Utah.
It had already been a fairly long day, and we realized we were not making the progress that we had hoped. Garrett and I decided to double back to the freeway, heading east, and then exiting and turning north on Nevada 233. After 20 or 30 miles, we came to the small town of Montello, one of the relatively few towns established during the construction of the Transcon that still manages to survive today. We found a little grocery store with a porch, perfect for having a snack and a cold drink, and to check in with home.
Sitting on the front porch of the grocery store in Montello, Nevada.
Leaving Montello and heading towards Lucin, the train becomes noticeably more desolate. We selected some less traveled tracks because why not? And after turning off the highway, we didn't see pavement again for the next 100 miles. In 1853, Congress authorized surveys of 5 different potential transcontinental routes from the Mississippi to the Pacific, ranging from north to south. It submitted a massive 12-volume report to Congress with the results in early 1855. However, no route or bill could be agreed upon until the southern states seceded, removing their politically motivated opposition to the central route. Finally, in 1862, at the height of the Civil War, President Lincoln signed the Pacific Railroad Act, cementing its start. By 1869, 1,800 miles of tracks were laid, coming together just north of the Great Salt Lake, Promontory Point, Utah.
Hey Garrett, where are we?
We are in Lucin, Utah, and this is the start of the Transcontinental Byway.
From day one, the promontory route over the top of the Great Salt Lake had challenges, namely a major climb out of Ogden and the need for a shorter, more direct route from Ogden west. Ultimately, this route was replaced in 1904 by the Lucin Cutoff, a shorter route built on pilings across the Great Salt Lake. The promontory route saw only local use afterwards, with the tracks ultimately removed in 1942 to support the war effort.
I got to be honest with you. I am so excited about this. This is something I've been wanting to do forever. This track was laid in 1869, and nothing has changed. It's exactly the way it was way back then, and I can't wait for the next 90 to 100 miles down this road. This is the old railbed.
Over the original route between Lucin and Ogden, the byway traverses desert that is as remote as anywhere in the lower 48, making a surreal contrast with the bustling activity that took place there 150 years ago.
Copacetic. This doesn't look copacetic.
With the sun setting, the desert was almost completely silent, not a breath of wind. We found a suitable site, relatively clear and level, just 50 or so feet from the track bed. A lone desert bird welcomed us on our tour of this grand museum. After dinner, as Garrett and I wound down with a glass of bourbon, we were both overcome with what it might have been like all those years ago as the track was being built. The smell of cooking fires and the sounds of thousands of exhausted men eating dinner, quiet conversations fading away as the men fell off to sleep before the night settled in. After 150 years, it didn't feel all that different. Morning was as peaceful as the night before. As I drank my coffee in silence, the image of life all those years ago rushed into my thoughts. Thousands of men rising with the sun, then starting the day scraping at the ground with picks and shovels. For 6 years, the workers had been cutting, filling, and laying track. Day after day, they struggled under hard, back-breaking labor. This, combined with discrimination and prejudice, the brutality of it all is almost unimaginable to me.
we know this doesn't do it justice, but if you look down that direction, so we're approximately 25, maybe 30 miles in from Lucin, where we entered the byway. It's been perfectly straight. There is not a single turn. And if you look this way, not a single turn. You know, so these old locomotives might have got up to, like, I don't know, who knows, a blazing speed on this straightaway.
The new railroad had to be operated and maintained. Along the Promontory branch, 28 sidings, stations, and associated towns were built to service up to 10 trains per day. From Kelton, with a population of about 700, a major stagecoach line and mail and freight routes supplied Idaho, Oregon, and the Intermountain North. Terrace, with nearly 1,000 residents, was the largest community and served as the maintenance headquarters for the Salt Lake Division. The town included a roundhouse, a machine shop, and an 8-track switchyard, along with hotels, a saloon, a justice of the peace, a library, bathhouse, and many other thriving businesses. People lived and died here, but today, all that remains are the faint outlines of foundations and the cemeteries of those that couldn't leave.
Garrett and I are running along, and we keep seeing these brick, and we're wondering what they are. They're on the sides of the road, the railbed, but they're fire brick for lining the inside of the firebox on the locomotives. And you can see how they've got a groove at the top. They stack nice, and when they get burnt, they actually glaze over and form basically a glass, and that's when they replace them. So it's just interesting little tidbit. Biggest cut we've seen on the Transcon.
Riding into Promontory, it's a relatively quiet afternoon. There are only a few cars in the parking lot. After stowing our gear, it was time to absorb. Passing through the building, reconstructed track lies before us, complete with a ceremonial tie and interpretive markers. We were there on April 30th, and Park's famous locomotives were nowhere in sight. On May 1st, 1869, the Central Pacific had reached the junction point and was waiting for the Union Pacific to lay the last few miles of their track. The date of the commemoration of the last spike was set for May 8th, but 2 days before this date, troubles arose for the Union Pacific at the rail camp in Piedmont, Wyoming. T.C. Durant, a vice president of the Union Pacific Railroad and the dignitary for the ceremonial event, was held up by 400 to 500 striking rail workers who had not been paid since January 1st. They disconnected his private rail car from the train and pushed it onto a siding, holding him captive until they received their pay. Durant wired his predicament, and the next day, $80,000 arrived to pay the men, and his rail car was released. On May 10, 1869, from Promontory Summit northwest of Ogden, a telegraph signaled to the nation the completion of the first Transcontinental Railroad. Locomotives were lined up facing each other, and at 12:47 p.m., the last iron spike was driven into a regular tie. Some 30,000 spectators were expected, but far less actually showed. Accounts suggest actual attendance was somewhere between 500 and 3,000, but old photos suggest the actual number was likely closer to 500. For several weeks after, Promontory continued to be a town of tents and crude shacks. The land speculators, petty merchants, saloon keepers, gamblers, and prostitutes who had followed these tent cities stayed on only as long as there were workers to entice. Promontory never became the site of a permanent city. Construction of the Lucin Cutoff in 1903 and 1904 siphoned away most of the traffic from Promontory's old line. In 1942, the old rails were salvaged for the war effort, and a ceremony marking the undriving of the Golden Spike was held. In 1943, a memorial marker was placed along the right-of-way where the old Golden Spike had been driven all those years earlier. And in the years after World War II, locals began to memorialize this historic event. In 1957, Congress established a 7-acre tract of land as the Golden Spike National Historic Site, which was enlarged to over 2,000 acres in 1965 and subsequently administered by the National Park Service. America's destiny was built on the back of Chinese and Irish immigrants who labored under hard, thankless conditions. Exploited and discriminated against, built this for us. And while it's long down the road from their sacrifice, I believe there is acknowledgement here. This monument is a subtle nod of gratitude from one generation to another. With our Transcon adventure completed, Garrett and I crashed with some old friends in Layton before heading north. Our return routed us through Logan, Utah, Bear Lake, and then Terrace, Idaho. All areas we had spent little time exploring. The weather in the highlands was distinctly different than what we experienced in the desert, with tremendous amounts of spring runoff and flooding. In the end, it was a great finish to our trip.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is May 2nd, and we're on our last and final day out on the trail, heading home. It's been a great 5 days so far, but today's just going to be putting down miles to get home.
Yep. So we're going to head through Blackfoot, Arco, Fairfield, Mountain Home, and back into Boise.
Yep. So no more real sights to see, so it's just going to be miles. Anyway.
Always fun.
Always fun.